The letter was never supposed to exist. It wasn't filed, wasn't stamped with ceremony, and wasn't meant for ordinary eyes. Hidden in a forgotten vault on a quiet base in Quantico, it waited more than a decade to be discovered. On the cover, there was no name, no rank, just two faded words, burned into the paper like an old scar. Iron Wolf. For years no one knew who it belonged to. Whispers circled, but no answers ever came. That changed the moment the file was cracked open, and from then on, nothing was the same. The morning air at Fort Hallberg was sharp and cold, carrying the kind of silence that demanded respect. This was where future leaders of the Marine Corps were forged, where discipline wasn't requested but demanded. Yet not everyone was welcome here. Sophia Mercer, a recent transfer from the medic division, felt that truth pressing on her like the weight of her own uniform. Her boots were polished to a mirror shine, her stance razor-sharp, her posture perfect. Still, the whispers followed her. Some cadets smirked when they passed. Others didn't bother to hide their words. Why is she even here? She probably begged her way in. Medics don't belong in leadership training. Sophia stood unmoving, hands behind her back, eyes locked forward. She had been through worse. The mockery stung, yes, but silence had always been her armor. Then came John Harlan, 26, confident and polished in arrogance. He carried himself like the world owed him its attention. He stopped in front of her, his smirk sharp as glass. "Transfer, huh?" His voice was loud enough to gather a crowd. "Cadet Mercer," Sophia answered evenly, not turning her head. "Not here, you're not," John replied. "Here, you're just another rookie trying not to drown." The cadets around him laughed. One muttered something about medics pretending to play soldier. Another suggested she wouldn't last a week. Sophia remained still, her jaw locked. She had learned long ago that the loudest person in the room was usually the weakest. By evening, the whispers had sharpened into outright mockery. In the locker room, John replayed his little exchange for an eager crowd, mimicking her voice in a high, mocking tone. "Cadet Mercer," he sneered, drawing laughter. "Bet she can't even strip a rifle without looking it up first." Another cadet added, "She'll be gone in days." At the far end, Sophia quietly unlaced her boots, shoulders relaxed. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself. But not everyone was fooled by her silence. Emma Reyes, sharp-eyed and observant, caught something the others missed. As Sophia carefully folded her uniform into her locker, a small patch slipped free and fell to the floor. Emma bent down quickly, snatching it up before anyone else noticed. The stitching was faded, nearly invisible. 3 words on worn gray fabric. "Iron Wolf Unit." Emma's breath caught. She had heard the name before, whispered during late-night briefings, and stories recruits weren't meant to hear. She handed it back quietly. Sophia accepted it with no words, tucked it into her jacket, and walked away. 2 weeks passed, and the jokes only grew sharper. John made sure of it. During one combat drill, he called out across the field, voice dripping with mockery. "Careful, Mercer. Wouldn't want you bruising those medic hands." Laughter followed him like a pack of dogs. But Sophia wasn't paying attention to him. Her eyes were scanning the ridge line beyond the obstacle course, narrowing slightly. Later that evening, long after drills had ended, she walked the perimeter alone. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel, her fingers brushing the cold steel fence. She paused at a corner where the woods pressed close. A camera flickered earlier that day, just for a second. No one else would have noticed. She had. From her pocket, she pulled out a small, battered notebook. On its pages were rows of scribbled notes, coordinates, times, small anomalies that no one else tracked. She wrote something down, then slipped it away again. That night, the strategy hall filled with restless recruits for a briefing. John sat near the front, grinning as if the room belonged to him. Then the lights dimmed. The projector froze. A low chime echoed through the hall. Across the instructor's console, a restricted code appeared. Authorization code, Wolf-01. The instructor frowned, typing furiously, but the system wouldn't respond. On Sophia's desk, her tablet buzzed once. She glanced down. One message flashed on the screen. No subject, no sender. Just 4 words glowing on the glass. Iron Wolf, stand by. Her pulse quickened. Emma, sitting nearby, caught the brief reflection on her screen. Her eyes widened, lips parting as realization struck. She didn't know what it meant exactly, but one thing was clear. Sophia Mercer wasn't just another cadet. Someone out there had just called her back. That night, while the others slept, Sophia sat cross-legged on her bunk, notebook open across her knees. Pages were filled with details no one else had seen. She turned to the newest entry and traced her finger over the fresh words. Wolf 01 authorization active. She closed the book softly, slid it beneath her pillow, and leaned back. Outside, the cold wind pressed against the glass. Somewhere far above Fort Hallberg's clearance level, encrypted servers processed a request, triggering alerts in places few dared to know existed. And miles away, a decorated officer in a quiet operations room froze as the words lit his screen. Colonel Robert Hale. He whispered the name softly, like an oath carried from another lifetime. Iron Wolf, reactivated. And with that, he rose, put on his cap, and walked out. The wheel had begun to turn again. By morning, the atmosphere at Fort Hallberg had shifted. The air carried a heaviness that hadn't been there before. Conversations that once flowed freely now dropped into cautious whispers. The strange system override from the night before lingered in every mind. In the training hall, recruits shuffled into rows, their movements slower than usual, their chatter restless. No one said it directly, but everyone was waiting for an explanation. At the front, John Harlan leaned against the podium, his usual smirk firmly in place. He flicked through his notes with the arrogance of someone who thought himself untouchable. "Guess the medic's secret's out," he said loudly, earning nervous chuckles. Probably hacked the system herself. Desperate move for attention. The laughter was weaker this time. Cadets glanced at one another uneasily, the humor falling flat. Something about the night before still hung like storm clouds overhead. Sophia Mercer sat quietly near the back, her posture sharp, her expression unreadable, but her chest rose and fell with steady, controlled breaths. She had trained herself to show nothing, but inside, the message still burned. Iron Wolf, stand by. Emma Reyes, 2 rows ahead, twisted in her seat just enough to whisper, "Sophia, that message, last night. What was it?" Sophia didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed forward, unblinking. Emma noticed her hand, though, clenched tight against her knee, tendons taut. Whatever this was, Sophia wasn't dismissing it. The lights flickered once, then again. Then, without warning, the hall went dark. A ripple of voices broke out. It lasted only seconds before the power surged back on, but the monitors now displayed a single flashing message. "Incoming, Colonel Robert Hale." The words lit the room like a flare. At first came the sound, footsteps echoing through the marble corridor, slow, deliberate, carrying weight. Then the double doors swung open, and he entered. Colonel Robert Hale, broad-shouldered, late 40s. His chest bore rows of ribbons. His presence silenced the room, without a word. The recruits didn't freeze because of his rank. They froze because of the air around him, the aura of a man who had carried soldiers into places no one expected them to return from, and still walked back with them alive. Hale didn't speak immediately. He let the silence grow heavy, his gaze sweeping the hall. When his eyes locked on Sophia Mercer, she shifted in her seat for the first time since arriving at the base. Not out of fear, not even surprise. Recognition. The colonel stepped forward, boots clicking sharply against the polished floor. When he spoke, his voice was calm, low, but it carried like thunder rolling across the mountains. "Iron Wolf, stand by." The room froze. The words cracked through the air like a weapon drawn. John blinked once, confused. "Wait, what?" he muttered. Hale ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on Sophia. "Cadet Sophia Mercer," he said, his voice iron steady. "Front and center." Sophia rose. Not hurriedly, not nervously, but with the precise movement of someone long accustomed to answering orders. Her boots struck the floor with rhythmic certainty as she walked to the front. The colonel's eyes softened slightly, though his posture never wavered. "Good to see you again, Iron Wolf," he said. Gasps rippled through the hall. Cadets exchanged bewildered looks. Whispers rose in waves, dying only when Hale's sharp gaze swept over them. John leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with a smirk. This some kind of performance? She's just a medic. A transfer. Hale turned his head slowly, his gaze locking on him. His tone was quiet, but it hit harder than a shout. Lieutenant, at ease. You've said enough. John's jaw clenched. The arrogance slipped, his smirk faltering. For the first time, he looked unsure. Hale let the silence stretch, his eyes sweeping the rows of cadets. Then he spoke again. You think you understand who you're training beside? You think rank and medals are what make a Marine. You don't have a clue who she is. No one moved. No one breathed. 7 years ago, Hale continued, a covert team was sent into the Dawson Ridge incident. 12 Marines were trapped behind enemy lines. Every extraction attempt failed. Command declared them a loss. The colonel paused, his words hanging heavy. His eyes never left Sophia. Then one operator, call sign Iron Wolf, led a 4-person unit into enemy territory. No backup, no air support, no chance of survival. His jaw tightened slightly. 47 minutes later, every one of those Marines walked out alive. The hall was silent, the weight of the story pressing into every chest. Chairs creaked as cadets unconsciously straightened. She didn't inherit that call sign, Hale said, stepping closer to Sophia. His voice lowered, not for secrecy, but reverence. She built it. His next words fell like thunder. And she saved my life. Gasps broke through the hall. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. Even John, his mouth half open, leaned back in his chair, his arrogance draining away. The colonel turned toward him fully. You mocked her, he said quietly. You called her weak. Unworthy. John stammered. I didn't know who she was. That's the point, Hale answered. You didn't ask. He turned back to the room, voice strong, final. From this moment forward, you will address her properly. Cadet Sophia Mercer, Iron Wolf Unit. And if any of you think leadership is about rank, his gaze swept them one last time. You're not ready to lead Marines. The silence cracked with movement. One cadet near the back rose to attention, snapping into salute. Then another, and another. Within seconds, every cadet in the hall stood tall, boots aligned, arms raised. For the first time since stepping onto the base, Sophia Mercer stood before them not as the medic they mocked, but as Iron Wolf. And though the salutes faded, the silence that followed carried weight. The wolf had returned. The hall emptied slowly, the cadets filing out in uneasy silence. Their boots struck the floor in unison, but none of them spoke. The weight of Colonel Hale's words clung to them, pressing into their chests with each step. For many, the name, Iron Wolf, was now more than a rumor. It was alive, standing among them in the shape of Sophia Mercer. Sophia remained at the front with Hale, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression calm. But beneath the composure, her thoughts churned. The old call sign was no longer buried. Someone had reactivated it. And if that happened, it meant eyes were already watching. Hale leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. They know who you are now, he said, his tone steady. But this isn't about them. Sophia's jaw tightened. Then who is it about? Someone's inside this base, Hale answered, his gaze hardening. And they're testing us. Her eyes narrowed. She had suspected it since the flickering camera on the perimeter days earlier. This wasn't paranoia. Something was moving in the shadows of Fort Hallberg. That night, the sky cracked open with rain. Storm clouds pressed heavy over the compound, thunder rumbling low like distant artillery. Most cadets lay restless in their bunks, minds replaying the colonel's story over and over. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the faint glow of her encrypted tablet. The same 4 words pulsed across the screen as before. Iron Wolf, stand by. She exhaled slowly, slipping the device beneath her pillow. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. Memories stirred in the darkness, faces from Dawson Ridge, fire cutting through the night, the sound of men who had already accepted death before she dragged them home. She shook it off, steadying her breathing. The past was done. What mattered was the threat at hand. At 2:13, The alarm shattered the silence. Breach detected. West perimeter. Siren screamed through the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in a haunting glow. Cadets scrambled from their bunks, grabbing boots, throwing on gear, voices clashing in confusion. Orders rang out over the intercom, lockdown protocols, armory security, full perimeter sweep. In the strategy hall, chaos reigned. Officers barked commands, maps flickered across digital screens, and the storm outside rattled the windows. Colonel Hale stood at the center like a stone pillar, his voice cutting through the noise. Lock down Alpha. Seal the gates. Secure the armory. But before his next command, a junior officer's pale voice cut across the room. Sir, they're not breaching from outside. The room went still. Hale's head turned sharply. What did you say? Motion sensors inside the south wing triggered first, the officer replied. His hands trembled as he clutched the tablet. Whoever's in here was already inside. A cold silence fell over the hall. The storm outside thundered in agreement. Hale's eyes found Sophia immediately. South wing. Take Reyes. Move. Within seconds, Sophia grabbed her sidearm. Emma Reyes, already sprinting toward her, fell in beside her. Boots pounded against the polished floors as they vanished down the corridor. The south wing was eerily quiet. Emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows against the walls. Every corner felt alive, every silence sharp. Sophia raised her weapon, her voice steady. Stay close. Watch the vents. They moved cautiously, their breaths syncing with the low hum of backup power. Then Sophia froze. A panel near the security feed was ajar, screws freshly disturbed. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. They've been here, she whispered. A faint scuff echoed behind them, the sound of a boot scraping against tile. In an instant, Sophia spun, weapon raised. Step out. From the darkness, a figure emerged, masked, dressed in black fatigues, carrying suppressed gear that belonged to no Marine unit. The intruder hesitated only a second before lunging. Emma fired, the shot cracking through the hall, but the figure dodged, bolting down the corridor. Sophia didn't hesitate. She gave chase, boots hammering the floor, breath steady, weapon leveled. The pursuit twisted through shadowed hallways, down a flight of metal stairs, into the maintenance wing. Pipes rattled, lights flickered. The intruder vanished around a corner. Sophia skidded to a halt, weapon raised, scanning. That's when she saw it. A small device, planted against the main security panel. Its light blinked silently, steady, patient. She yanked it free, examining the casing. Her stomach tightened. Not foreign tech. Not random sabotage. U.S. military issue. Her jaw clenched. Whoever had planted it wasn't an outsider. They had clearance. By dawn, the sirens had gone silent. The intruders had disappeared, leaving behind no stolen weapons, no casualties, just the planted devices. Testing. Probing. This wasn't an attack, Sophia said, placing the device onto the operations table with a sharp clink. Her voice was flat, but her eyes burned. Hale studied it, his expression grim. No, he said quietly. They were measuring our response. The implication cut deeper than any battle wound. Someone within the system wanted to know how Iron Wolf would react. Across the room, John Harlan stepped forward, his arrogance gone, his face pale. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't know. Sophia studied him in silence, her eyes cold, unreadable. Finally she spoke. Now you do. The words carried no anger, no mockery, only finality. Outside, dawn broke gray and heavy over Fort Hallberg. Rain dripped from eaves, mist clinging to the training fields. Sophia stood beneath the awning, staring toward the horizon. The call sign they buried years ago was awake again. Someone out there wanted to test if she had forgotten who she was. They would learn soon enough. Because Sophia Mercer wasn't here to fit in. She wasn't here to win approval. She was here to lead. And this time, the whole base knew exactly who she was. The storm had rolled past by morning, but the air at Fort Hallberg felt heavier than ever. Every cadet carried the memory of the alarms, the breach, the shadows in the hallways. Yet training continued as if nothing had happened. Marching drills, Weapons checks, obstacle courses. Orders barked, boots thundered, sweat poured. But the usual chatter was gone. Whispers replaced it. Whispers of Iron Wolf. Whispers of betrayal. Sophia moved through the training yard with precise efficiency. Her rifle drills were flawless, her stances exact. Still, she could feel their eyes on her, not mocking now, but measuring. Fearful respect, uncertain curiosity. Every cadet wanted to know who she really was, but none dared ask. Emma Reyes stayed close, watching her with a mix of awe and loyalty. She had seen the patch, the message, the intruder in black. Emma wasn't ready to call herself a believer, but she knew one thing. Sophia wasn't ordinary. John Harlan, on the other hand, kept his distance. His arrogance had drained away overnight, replaced with something else. Not respect, not yet. Shame. He no longer mocked Sophia, but his glances carried the weight of someone who realized he had crossed a line he couldn't erase. At noon, the cadets gathered for briefing. The strategy hall buzzed with unease, until Colonel Hale entered and silence dropped like a hammer. His gaze swept the room, steady, unflinching. Last night was not an accident, he said. It wasn't a random infiltration. It was a test. Someone with clearance authorized those devices. Someone wanted to see how this base would respond. A ripple of discomfort spread across the room. A cadet shifted in his seat. Another muttered under his breath. Hale continued, voice like iron. You are Marines in training, but understand this. You are also targets. Whoever planted those devices wasn't after weapons or data. They were after us. His gaze sharpened. They wanted to know if Iron Wolf was truly gone. All eyes turned toward Sophia. She didn't move, didn't flinch. But the silence pressed heavier with each passing second. Hale broke it. From this point forward, we move as if under surveillance. Trust will be tested. Loyalties will be questioned. And anyone who underestimates this threat will not leave here ready to lead. He dismissed them with a sharp wave, and the room emptied into murmurs. Later, in the mess hall, the tension spilled into hushed conversations. Plates clattered, boots shuffled, but no one spoke openly. Emma slid into the seat across from Sophia. They're afraid, she said softly. Sophia glanced at her, her expression unreadable. Good. Fear keeps people alive. Emma leaned forward, lowering her voice. But what about you? Last night, you didn't look surprised. You were ready. Sophia set her fork down. Because I've seen it before. Shadows slipping inside walls. Tests disguised as accidents. The only difference now is that this time, they're watching me. Emma's brow furrowed. You think it's personal? It always is. Before Emma could respond, a voice cut in. John Harlan stood at the end of the table, tray untouched in his hands. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. I owe you an apology. The mess hall seemed to freeze. Conversations faltered, spoons stopped midair. John swallowed hard. I mocked you because I thought you didn't belong here. I was wrong. He glanced around, as if every eye wasn't already on him. You saved people. You saved the colonel. You've done more than any of us could dream. I didn't know. Sophia studied him, her gaze sharp but calm. The silence stretched until it cut like glass. Finally, she said, Apologies don't erase weakness, Harlan. Learn from it, or it will kill you. John's face tightened, but he nodded once. Understood. He turned and walked away, shoulders squared, but his pride left behind on the floor. That night, Sophia sat alone in the dim glow of her bunk. The notebook lay open across her knees. She traced the coordinates she had written days earlier, eyes narrowing. The breach hadn't been random. The devices were planted in precise spots, blind zones in the base's security grid. Whoever was behind it knew Fort Hallberg intimately. A soft knock broke her focus. Emma stood in the doorway. You're not sleeping, she said gently. Neither are you, Sophia replied. Emma stepped inside, lowering her voice. I've been thinking. What if this isn't just a test? What if it's a message? Sophia tilted her head. Go on. Emma hesitated. Iron Wolf was buried. Forgotten. Now suddenly, the code reactivates, the colonel appears, and the base is breached all in the same week? That's not coincidence. Whoever did this, they want you to know they're out there. Sophia closed the notebook slowly. You're right. And the worst part. Emma frowned. What? They're not finished. As if on cue, the intercom crackled to life. A low, distorted voice filled the silence, calm and measured. Iron Wolf, the hunt has begun. The sound vanished, replaced with static. Emma's eyes widened. Sophia's jaw clenched. The enemy wasn't outside the walls. They were already here, and they had just declared war. The distorted voice still echoed in Sophia's ears long after the intercom fell silent. Emma stood frozen, her chest rising and falling in short, unsteady breaths. The dormitory around them felt colder, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the threat. Sophia's hand tightened around the notebook in her lap. They're inside, she said flatly. Emma swallowed hard. What do we do? Before Sophia could answer, alarms blared through the compound. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed, and the overhead voice barked orders. Security breach. All cadets to emergency stations. South corridor compromised. Sophia grabbed her gear in seconds, her movements calm, deliberate. Emma followed close behind, adrenaline pushing her forward. The hallways exploded with chaos, cadets sprinting, officers shouting, boots hammering against the polished floors. But Sophia didn't run blindly. Her eyes scanned every corner, every flicker of shadow, her mind already piecing together the pattern. This wasn't random. The intruders were driving them, hurting them. In the strategy hall, Colonel Hale stood at the center, issuing commands with thunder in his voice. Maps and live feeds flickered across glowing screens, but even the technology struggled to keep up with the breach. Seal the east wing. Hale barked. Redirect Bravo to the armory. Nobody moves alone. He turned just as Sophia entered with Emma at her side. For the briefest moment, relief flickered across his face. You were right, he said. They're already here. Sophia's gaze swept the screens. Intruders in black moved with precision, slipping through blind zones, planting more of the blinking devices. She recognized the pattern immediately, a grid of disruption. They weren't stealing weapons. They weren't targeting officers. They're marking positions, she said sharply, creating weaknesses for something bigger. Hale's eyes narrowed. Then we stop them now. Emma leaned over the table, pointing at a flickering feed. There, south generator wing. If they cut that, the base goes dark. Sophia grabbed her rifle, checking the chamber. I'll take it. Hale met her gaze. Not alone. A heavy silence fell. Every cadet in the hall looked at her, some with fear, others with hesitation, but all with the same silent question. Was she truly Iron Wolf? John Harlan stepped forward. His voice, for once, was steady and humble. I'll go with her. Murmurs rippled. The same man who mocked her was now volunteering to follow. Sophia studied him, searching for arrogance. There was none. Only resolve. Fine, she said, but follow my lead. The three of them, Sophia, Emma, and John, sprinted through the corridors. The storm outside had returned, rain lashing against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. Their boots pounded in rhythm, weapons raised, nerves sharpened. The generator wing loomed ahead, its heavy doors sealed with steel locks. But one lock dangled loose, sliced clean. Sophia raised a hand, signaling silence. She pressed to the wall, then eased the door open. Inside, shadows moved between towering machines. 3 intruders in black fatigues, their masks reflecting the emergency glow. One knelt near the generator, planting a device that pulsed with blue light. Sophia's voice cut the silence. Step away. The intruder spun, weapons rising. The air cracked with gunfire. Sparks flew from metal beams, echoing like thunder inside the chamber. Emma dropped low, returning fire with sharp bursts. John pressed to cover, teeth gritted, firing controlled shots. Sophia moved like a predator, her rifle steady, her steps precise. She dropped one intruder with a single shot, then slid behind a column as another returned fire. Bullets clanged off steel inches from her head, but her focus never wavered. John, she barked. Flank left. For the first time, he obeyed without hesitation. He sprinted wide, drawing fire. The second intruder pivoted, exposing himself. Sophia stepped out, squeezing the trigger once. The figure crumpled. Only one remained, the one at the generator. He slammed a button on his device, and the pulsing light quickened. Emma shouted, "It's armed." Sophia charged forward, tackling him hard against the metal floor. The rifle clattered away as the two struggled. The intruder's strength was brutal, his masked face inches from hers as he shoved back. But Sophia's knee drove into his chest, and with a sharp twist, she slammed him down. Her sidearm pressed against his helmet. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The figure only laughed, low and distorted through the mask. "Iron Wolf, they'll never let you sleep again." Sophia pulled the trigger. The chamber echoed once. The figure went still. She yanked the device from the generator, examining it quickly. The countdown froze at 3 seconds, her fingers steady as she disarmed it. The blue glow died. Silence followed, broken only by their breathing. Emma's voice shook. "You stopped it." Sophia set the device on the floor, rising slowly. Her eyes hardened. "No, we delayed it." John wiped sweat from his brow, staring at her with new understanding. "You really are Iron Wolf." Sophia didn't answer. She didn't need to. Back in the strategy hall, Hale listened as Sophia placed the device on the table. The room went silent, every cadet watching. "They weren't trying to destroy us," she said. "They were testing how fast I would respond. They wanted proof Iron Wolf still exists." Hale's jaw tightened. And now they have it. Sophia scanned the room. The cadets who once mocked her, the officers who once doubted her. Their eyes no longer carried ridicule. They carried trust. She straightened her shoulders. "Then let them come. I'm ready." The room seemed to exhale as one. For the first time, the cadets didn't just see Sophia Mercer. They saw Iron Wolf. And outside, beyond the storm and the walls, unseen eyes watched through hidden lenses. The voice crackled once more over distant speakers. "Iron Wolf has returned. The hunt begins." Sophia lifted her chin, unshaken. The wolf was awake. And this time, nothing would put it back to sleep.